Something a little bit different today. We're going to be looking at 3 pairs of Japanese EPs released in the 60s, and hopefully later on we'll be listening to a few samples from these different records and also comparing them with a couple of other album releases, but I'll get more into that as we go along. So very quickly, first of all, the first EP we'll be looking at is Follow That Dream, and in the early 60s up to 1963, all Elvis's Japanese EPs were released like this, with a flimsy paper insert and this blue Victor company sleeve. All of the 60s EPs were released on this blue Victor label, and this one here has the catalogue number CP1024, and the CP catalogue number tells you that it's actually a mono version. So that one came out in July of 62, and then in the spring of 1966, March 1966, late 1965, early 1966, they released a series of EPs called Presley Golden Compact Series, and this is the Follow That Dream one. As you can see, they've completely changed the cover. Same 4 songs. And there's the back cover. And all these releases came with a lyric sheet and blue label. This time you can see the catalogue number begins SCP. So SCP denotes a stereo record. But as most of you know, I'm sure, RCA lost the stereo masters for the Follow That Dream EP songs. So what does that mean? Is this stereo or not? Well, we'll hopefully find out a little bit later. But anyway, that is supposedly a stereo EP. The next pair of EPs we're going to look at is Kid Galahad. This is the first one from 1962. And sometimes they would be quite generous with the inserts, and they would make it a fold-out one, like this one here, with the lyrics in the middle. My particular copy of Kid Galahad is actually a test pressing. This one was also reissued in 1966 as part of the Presley Golden Compact series, and as you can see, they've changed the cover slightly, changed the background color, and they've also touched up the Elvis picture. I've done something to the photograph anyway, presumably to make it stand out. And it's very similar to the copy of Follow That Dream we just looked at with the lyric sheet. This one is also a living stereo copy. But is it true stereo? Well, we'll have a listen to that later on, hopefully. So the mono EP came out in November 62, and the movie didn't come out until March 63. And the EP, the first EP and the movie had a different title. And if you can just have a look at these 2 here again, you see the green one at the back there, you can see the red letters, and you can see there in the middle it says KO. And this is the Japanese title of the movie, and it translates into English as Love's KO Punch. But the first EP down here, you can see the title in yellow. This is actually a different title, and this translates as Kissing in the Ring. I imagine that if Elvis were in a boxing ring with another guy, kissing would be the last thing on his mind. And the third pair of EPs we're going to have a quick look at is from the movie Viva Las Vegas. This is the first Japanese pressing, and actually I'll take this out and show you something. The cover is actually now a proper picture sleeve, not an insert with company sleeve. And they switched to using these picture sleeves on EPs in late 1962. This one came out in 1964. And they don't just stick the record in the picture cover, they actually give you an inner sleeve. The mono EPs tended to come with one like this, which is a paper inner sleeve, and the stereo ones came with a paper and plastic inner sleeve. Show you the record again, and you look closely at the title on the labels there. It's another CP one, so it's a mono pressing. The labels there read Love in Las Vegas. So once again, just like Spin Out and California Holiday and Harem Holiday, they used the UK titles for that movie. And the stereo one, also from March 1966, looks like that. So again, they've just taken the main photograph of Elvis. In this case, they've blown it up, put it on a plain green background. That's the back cover, the Japanese notes. That's the lyric sheet. And this is the type of inner sleeve that I was talking about, with the stereo ones, plastic and paper. And I'll show you the labels on this one. This is another SCP one, so this is also supposedly stereo. And you can see they've actually used the Viva Las Vegas title on this pressing. So while we're on the subject of this mono stereo business, does anybody know why the Camden releases used the mono mixes of the Viva Las Vegas and Kid Galahad songs? Because those stereo masters were not lost, but on the Camden LPs they used the mono mixes. So if anybody knows why they didn't use stereo mixes, please let me know. I've recorded samples from one song from each EP, and we're going to hopefully listen to those now. And I also want to compare those with this American Camden copy of I Got Lucky. I think this is an early 70s one. And we're also going to be comparing those three with another mystery source, a fourth record. And you can play along and try to guess what that mystery source is as we go through. Just a quick word about the recordings I made. I basically played the records through a small preamp into my computer and recorded the songs on Audacity. The stereo Japanese EPs, they're actually very quiet, so we're going to be listening to those two times, the original signal and then the boosted signal. So I actually basically had to make the stereo recordings sound louder using the normalization feature in Audacity. So let's begin with What a Wonderful Life from the Follow That Dream EP. This was recorded July 2nd, 1961 at RCA Studio B, and I suggest that you put on your headphones to get the best out of this particular experiment. Here we go.
What a wonderful life, this life I'm living. What a wonderful life, what a wonderful life, this life I'm living. What a wonderful life, what a wonderful life, this life I'm living. What a wonderful life, what a wonderful life, this life I'm living. What a wonderful life, what a wonderful life, this life I'm living. What a wonderful life. I don't know where I'm going, don't care where I'm going. Like the four winds are blowing, I go on, laughing the day away, loving the night away. I don't know where I'm going, don't care where I'm going. Like the four winds are blowing, I go on, laughing the day away, loving the night away. I don't know where I'm going, don't care where I'm going. Like the four winds are blowing, I go on, laughing the day away, loving the night away.
So what do you think of that? There are some clear differences there in the stereo and mono versions. I think I actually prefer the stereo version in this particular case. It sounds a bit more spacious than the other versions. Even though it's not true stereo, it still doesn't sound like the 1950s recordings that were done in electronically reprocessed stereo. And I think I prefer this type of stereo here. I don't know what they did to get it to sound that way. But certainly in the case of this song, What a Wonderful Life, I think I prefer this version. And probably I prefer the louder version to the quieter one. Then I think I would choose the Mystery record, which we'll talk about later, followed by the Camden. The Camden sounds a bit boxy and compressed to me. And for me, the worst one in this case was the Japanese mono EP, but that's basically because that record that I played, it has a bit of static in there or distortion. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, so let's go to the next song. This is Riding the Rainbow from Kid Galahad.
I'm riding the rainbow, hitting the highway to happiness. I'm riding the rainbow, hitting the highway to happiness. I'm riding the rainbow, hitting the highway to happiness. I'm riding the rainbow, hitting the highway to happiness. I'm riding the rainbow, hitting the highway to happiness. Oh, I'm riding the rainbow, I follow my star.
Riding the Rainbow was recorded in October 1961 on October 26th and 27th at Radio Recorders. So it was recorded at a different studio and with a different engineer to What a Wonderful Life. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but to me it sounds like a better recording. Of those 5 versions that we listened to there, there's no doubt in my mind that I preferred the Japanese mono pressing. And maybe that's no surprise. It does sound crystal clear. It's one of the first pressings ever made in Japan, with it being a test pressing. Almost as good, I thought, was the Mystery vinyl, which sounds a little bit louder actually, and almost as good as the Japanese mono one. In third, I have the Camden, which sounds a little bit flat, and then at the end, I have the 2 Japanese stereo versions, the quiet one and the louder one. The normalized version, the loud version, sounds a little bit harsh, whereas the quieter version sounds a little bit muddy. Okay, we've got one more sample to listen to. That is I Need Somebody to Lean On from Viva Las Vegas.
I need somebody to tell my troubles to, no use denying. I need somebody to tell my troubles to, no use denying. I need somebody to tell my troubles to, no use denying. I need somebody to tell my troubles to, no use denying. I need somebody to tell my troubles to, no use denying. Won't that somebody please, please listen to my plea? Won't that somebody please, please listen to my plea? Won't that somebody please, please listen to my plea? Won't that somebody please, please listen to my plea? Won't that somebody please, please listen to my plea?
So once again, we can hear some very clear differences there between the stereo version and the 3 mono versions. I think I prefer the quieter of the 2 stereo versions over everything else. It sounds very spacious, if I can use that word again, like there's a lot of air in the mix, and I think that kind of slow ballad really benefits from that. The normalized stereo version, the louder stereo version, sounded a little bit too loud to me, but still better than the other 3 mono versions. In third place, I would have the Mystery vinyl. It sounded a little bit sharper than the Camden, which I would put in fourth place. And then at the end, I would have the Japanese mono version. In this particular case, my copy was a little bit crackly for some reason. I don't know why, it looks mint. So otherwise, the Camden and the Japanese mono pressings sound the same to me. So all I have to do now is to reveal the mystery source. So as I said, we had the Camden album. That was the third record we were listening to. So this album, of course, contains all 3 songs that we listened to. And this one also contains the same 3 songs. This is the Pickwick pressing. Now, I know a lot of you don't like, or some of you don't like Pickwick albums for whatever reason. But to me, going by my results there, the Pickwick actually sounds better than the Camden. So I might pick myself up some more Pickwicks. So please let me know what you think about the samples, if you've managed to listen to them, and if you haven't been able to listen to them because of YouTube, then I suggest you get the records and check them out for yourself. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Cheers.